Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm just going to see a few of you starting to filter in, so we'll give attendees some time to log into the session. If you want, whenever you're ready, feel free to start entering questions. The Q&A box is just on the bar at the bottom of the Zoom chat. Have that open now or into the chat, whatever's easier. Let's get started in just a minute. Cool. So this is our episode 2 of a new series that I launched, Ask Us Anything series, sort of similar to the AMA on Reddit. So if people logging on, if you're not familiar with our event, the Social Media Strategy Summit, I'm the organizer. I'm Brianna Jacobs, and we host a number of executive education events around the country. Obviously, a lot of that has moved virtual, but I thought, a valuable setup would be to have speakers come on and really just take your questions and, be able to give you all insights where you need it most right now. So all of these speakers present have been a part of our social media event before, so I'm excited to see them online and have them back. So again, as I mentioned when we first logged on, there's the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you want to enter your question, our moderator, David Fisher, will be fielding questions there. Wherever it's possible to give us, some context as, what company or industry you're coming from, or just being, specific to your situation so that our speakers can help, with the best insights and hopefully give you some frameworks that you can apply at your company. So I have the speaker Twitter handles on here if you wanted to follow up with them afterwards with questions or just say hi or get in touch. Also hashtag SMSsummit. I'll be monitoring that during our hour here. If there's any other questions that you wanted to add there or anything you wanted to share from the event. So we're going to have our panelists kick it off. David Fisher with Rockstar Consulting, our moderator here. So I will let him take it away and let our get our conversation started.
Very good. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hope that wherever you are having a great morning, afternoon, depending on your time zone. Hopefully, if you're in the Midwest, you are not too bummed out about the snow that we have. It will pass. It will melt quickly. But we are really excited to have you join us today. Before we kick off with your questions, we do want to do some quick introductions. So I'll actually, Caleb, just because I'm looking at you right now, if you wanted to give us a quick intro about you and your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, happy to. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Also in Chicago, so woke up to snow this morning and was not happy about it, but, we persevere. People in the Midwest we're hardy people. I run a consulting firm called 18 Coffees. We operate out of Chicago, but we have clients all over the country and all over the world, mostly related to issues of digital transformation, including marketing strategy, including innovation strategy. But we in particular care about social innovation and social good. So a lot of our clients are nonprofit. We probably have 70% of our clients nonprofit, and then the rest in different for-profit industries. My background in particular has been in consulting, in the agency world, and in political engagement. And so happy to talk with all of you about how to exist in this very weird time where we're all somewhat online more than we would be otherwise.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. Megan, how about you next?
Sure. Hi, good morning. I did not wake up to snow today. I live in New York, but I'm currently based out of South Carolina. And I am the CEO and founder of a social engagement agency called Social Tribe. We specialize in social content influencer marketing programs, primarily working with enterprise technology companies that have really complex marketing ecosystems, marketing teams around the world, trying to figure out how to really use social, digital to engage their customers in a more meaningful and long-term way. My company has been virtual since the beginning, so 11 years. And our team is based all around the country. So not only is this kind of our normal day-to-day in terms of using video chat and things like that, but we've got lots of great tips and suggestions for how to make the shift to moving from a traditional office setting to a virtual work environment. So hopefully we'll have some good questions about that too.
Very cool. Very cool. Mary, finish us up.
Of course. Hi, everyone. So glad you guys have joined us today. I'm Mary Olivieri. I'm the Executive Vice President and Executive Creative Director at CBD Marketing out of Chicago. We often say not that kind of CBD, although we do handle some clients like that. Our areas of expertise are in B2B2C channel marketing for clients from the higher ed vertical to building products to home products and more, food and food ingredients as well, hence the CBD aspect. I'm proud to have worked on some really innovative campaigns like the Dos Equis Most Interesting Man campaign, as well as many for Pringles, Firestone, Heineken, James Hardie, and Whirlpool Corporation, just to name a few. So I come to this panel from a creative perspective, and I have a background in improvisational theater. Of course, I live in Chicago. We all should. So I'm here to add a little color, commentary, and flavor to the questions that you're asking today.
Fantastic. And Mary is right. If you are in Chicago, you're actually required to do some improv training or else you can't renew your driver's license. That's the rule. My name is David Fisher, but I picked up a nickname D Fish when I was a musician. It has stuck with me into my professional world. And I am an author, speaker, coach, consultant. I actually work a lot with sales teams, and over the last 5 to 10 years, have dealt with a lot of sales teams who are becoming more like marketers, and conversely, helping marketing teams learn how to work with their salespeople, especially around social media, digital engagements, and also figuring out how to still be a human while using all of those different tools. So that is kind of the perspective that I will be bringing to this time as well. And I see that some people are already throwing up questions, which is fantastic. This really is designed to be a resource for you. This is a conversation. So whatever questions you have, big or small, that you've been wrestling with, AUA, ask us anything. So I wanted to actually start with some that we had before we started today. And I think this is good for maybe everybody. So whoever wants to jump into this question, how do you find a way to market to your customers without sounding like you are a crisis profiteer and just trying to take advantage of the situation, when you actually might have a product or service which is incredibly valuable and your customers need to know that you're there for them during this time? So that's the first question. Who wants to dive into that? Nobody.
I can take it first.
Megan, go for it.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been talking a lot with our clients about. How do you maintain a connection with your audiences, with your customers, let them know that you're there as a resource without coming across as having a ulterior motive, right? I think everyone is feeling very sensitive to this, and also how important that customer experience is. Right now, people's patience is tried in ways that we can't imagine. People are juggling a blend of home lives and family lives. They're trying to maintain work and also manage all of their own sort of emotional processing of everything that's going on around us. So I think it's really fair to say that tension is high, and that people are hyper sensitive to feeling like they're in any way being manipulated or, or kind of taken advantage of. So what we have been really talking with our clients a lot, and also for ourselves as a company, is really trying to reorient to how can we be a helpful resource? What is it, what are the challenges that we think we know that our customers or our clients are facing? What is it that's keeping them up at night? That's the question that we ask ourselves, that we try to use to kind of step into somebody else's shoes, is what is it that's keeping them up at night? What's going on around them? And then how can we be a helpful resource without a sales objective? So, it's really sort of the give model. And really focusing on how can you be a helpful resource, not how can I be a helpful resource with expectation for return, and really orienting through that perspective, because that's what people need. And I think that that brands that do that really well will see the benefit of that relationship further down the line, when we're out of crisis, when people have kind of started to evolve beyond the current conditions. Those are the types of experiences and interactions that they will remember, and that will kind of guide them in terms of what kind of relationship they're willing to have with your business going forward.
And I think it's important to note that now more than ever, customers really are seeking out conversations with brands. They're in a new state, they're in a new place, and they really do want to have great brand interaction without feeling like they're being sold to Megan's point. A really good way to do that is to really focus on a more educational offering in your content versus a sales offering. As Megan had said, really put yourself in their place and understand what their challenges are, and then offer them solutions to those challenges. It's a lot of goodwill investment right now that will be a great return on your investment later.
For sure. Caleb, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it really matters what kind of industry you're in about how you approach this, because I've been having lots of conversations with colleagues and clients just about there really being three kinds of categories of companies in this crisis. One is companies that are directly affected or related to the crisis. So healthcare, for example, you are going to have dramatically different types of messaging than a consumer products company, or anything having to do with food, restaurants, that's being directly affected. I think you can have really honest conversations with customers, with kind of all kinds of stakeholders about where you're at in the middle of this crisis, and make some hard asks. That's one category. The other is you're not directly related or affected by this crisis, but you are related to how people are getting through it. So let's say the gaming industry is seeing a boom right now. I don't think you necessarily need to stop advertising for your game. I think that might be something that could help people, cope, given that we're all stuck inside. But you just have to be very aware of your tone, right? And not come off as tone deaf, but you can continue to, market like you would normally for the most part. And then the other is basically everyone else, right? Like, especially if you are in a discretionary category, or you are a consumer good that no one is going to purchase in the immediate term. I think you have to be really careful, to Megan's point, about how you come off as being too salesy or being too, just blatantly kind of trying to keep your brand top of mind when we're all mentally overloaded. I think it's a really tough proposition if you are in a category where reach and repeat is kind of, your brand's mantra. We have to keep, our brand top of mind, because that's the only way people are going to buy us, even when people come back to economic activity. I think it's tough to say shut down everything. But I do think there are ways you can provide value in the immediate crisis in a way that feels natural, without being too salesy. But I do think that brands and companies that have spent time investing in being about something other than just selling are going to have a better job of it right now than other companies are.
For sure. I think that's a great insight. I mean, one thing I would say though, remember, especially if you're in a large organization that has salespeople, they still are trying to sell, right? And so you have to really manage your internal conversation with them. Because I'm in agreement with everybody. This idea of providing education, support, information is going to be really valuable. The sales team, and if you're trying to sell yourself, they're like, hey, all that's great, but I still have my quota this quarter. I need to keep my job, whatever it might be. So one thought that I would share is be very careful of the but in your messaging right now. Because one thing that I have seen a lot of organizations do and individuals incorrectly is they try to do some empathy up front. And then but I still need to sell. Like, oh, wow, these times are hard. But hey, let's talk about business anyways. And what that does is it negates everything in front of that but, right? So if you're going to be empathetic, if you're going to lead with help, do that. And you absolutely should. But then put an and there, right? Not a but. It'll be much, much more effective. I think a great way to start. And, we were going to ask this question, but to begin, and then we just go into the questions. But I want to ask everybody, what's one way that this has impacted your business and, either your business or just your personal life? Really quick, because I think that it's also important that everybody on the call realize we're all figuring this out too, right? We're all in this together for sure, right? Mary, what's been the biggest impact for you?
Professionally, I manage the creative, digital, and workflow teams at the agency. And they're all very different departments, but we all have to work together in order to achieve what we need to achieve for our clients. So often the challenge is, now that we're remote, we're not overhearing the stuff we normally would overhear in the office, and that information share has drastically changed. So normally we preach less meetings, we don't want to be in all these meetings all the time. But right now we're all about over communication, because we don't have the luxury of hearing somebody talk to somebody else and pick up that information that we would need to do the job successfully. At the end of the day, what hasn't changed is that what clients' needs come first, and being successful for them is very important to us. So we've established more communication across those departments, as well as with our account services department. Personally, I love that I'm no longer suffering from FOMO. I know that that's a great marketing technique, fear of missing out, but I'm not missing out on anything anymore, and I'm actually relaxing more. So that makes me happy.
Love it. Megan, how about for you?
Yeah, so there's two things as a business that we have that have really kind of become the focal point for us, which is one, really, really emphasizing a relationship-based everything model. So at this particular moment, looking back, I think we all get at certain points overwhelmed, or we get focused on technology and getting things done and to-do lists and, bang it out, do all these different things. And we realized pretty quickly that we needed to shift our mindset as an organization from, it's not enough to check boxes. It's not enough just to be producing things. We need to be really connecting with each other as team members, with clients, with partners, with advocates, with friends, with families. And so we've really focused on what we're calling a relationship-based everything model, which is putting relationships at the forefront of every single interaction and encounter that we have, as being the way that we are responding and engaging. The second thing that we realized as a business, and I think this is probably really relatable, is realizing that we need to move faster. We realized that, a lot of the things that we've kind of become complacent and comfortable in, putting together really, really big fancy decks, doing a lot of extensive research, iterating, revising, all of those things just isn't going to work in the current environment. Everybody's trying to figure out how to pivot and adjust in real time, building the plane while you fly it kind of a thing. And so that those two things, I think, became really clear to us, is that we're really taking a relationship-based everything focus, and we are really moving internally and with our client partners to be more agile and to be able to move more quickly. And then on a personal level, you know, my day-to-day is actually very much the same. There hasn't been a lot of change for us because we haven't had an office. But I would say, you know, what we've really done is also invested and spent more time on making sure that as a team and as an organization, we are thinking about and encouraging each other to be a little bit more holistic in how we show up at work. That means giving people a lot more kind of latitude to be, you know, flexibility with their schedule, accommodating with, you know, personal commitments, families, things like that. Really giving everybody a little extra breathing room because there's a lot
Very
to
cool.
take in.
Yeah, for sure. Caleb, what's been the biggest impact for you?
I mean, I would probably definitely start with family life because we have 3 kids in school. And so we are trying to figure out what 2 working parents plus 3 kids trying to homeschool looks like. And, you know, I think a lot of people out there can probably empathize that we've just given up on our 5-year-old and we're just like, you know what, just go play. It's fine. Like, we don't need to do video chats with your teacher.
Experiential
Like,
learning.
we will,
It's good.
yeah, we'll catch you up later, dude. Like, you're gonna be fine. So from a business standpoint, I mean, similar to Megan, we already had a pretty remote distributed team. So I think we were ahead of the game in terms of being mostly okay with having to shift virtual. And we, you know, had a talent base that was already, we were organizing in really interesting ways online. And so we were able to double down on those things and really, I think, meet the moment. But from a planning perspective, I mean, it's just tough with so much ambiguity going out there in terms of economic activity in the next year. And so we kind of always think about it on terms of 3 horizons. So the first horizon is just like, what can we do to defend ourselves from the current moment and invest now? And, you know, we hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Like, where can we scale back or like cut back unnecessary expenditures? You know, obviously we're thinking about that in the short term. In the next horizon over the next year, just like you said, David, we're thinking about selling for ourselves. Like, how is selling going to change when we can't like sit in a room with someone and like actually, you know, sell them on an idea? We're also, you know, building different kinds of diagnostic tools for our clients. Like, how do you think about shifting your marketing operations in a world that doesn't look like it did a year ago? You know, we're working through things like that. And then the last horizon is just, we always think about how do we make small bets about the future that we don't know is coming in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And I think for us, it's about how does the future of work change? How can we like double down on our model in terms of distributed work, in terms of building empathy with people using digital tools so that when they come back to work, we are well positioned for, you know, helping them through that.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. I guarantee that as you were going through all those, there's people sitting in front of their computers just nodding their heads going, yep. Luckily, my 9-month-old is not at the school stage yet. He's just at the running around and getting into everything stage all the time. So that's, I get to spend more time with him. I guess that's a positive, negative, I'm not sure. Well, Caleb, I want to go back to you with this question because I think that this is in line with a lot of the work you do. So this is from somebody who works at a member-based association. They're asking, are there tips or strategies you can recommend for identifying influencers and empowering them to help during these times with things such as getting donations, renewing membership, spreading the word about resources and content, et cetera? So are you seeing anything around that or have any suggestions there?
Yeah, definitely. We've worked with a few member-based associations and member-based organizations in the past. And, you know, there's a few different things that come to mind. One is that, you know, usually the people that are the most influential are the ones who show up the most often. There's kind of 2 different influencers in a membership-based organization. There's the people who come with a lot of name recognition in the first place, right? Like they are on they're often on your board, or they're like, you know, I'm the CEO of an organization, or they came with their own influence to the member-based organization. And then there's the people who kind of organically became influencers within the organization because they showed up, got FaceTime with a lot of the other members, or digital FaceTime, as it were, depending on what type of member organization it is. And I think the latter is a really much more interesting category in this moment because they're the ones that are going to keep, I think, the engagement going in the member organization. And I think they're easy to find. Like if they've come every time you've had the door open, if they've responded to every kind of call to action you've had, you probably already have a short list of who those people are. And it'd be really easy to activate them, put them on webinars with other members, send them kits with different social media content. You know, like there's some specific kind of concrete things you can do with those folks that for them, since they're already really engaged, they would love some like higher touch engagement with the organization, but would also keep, you know, the rest of the members engaged, I think.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Thanks for that. Mary, I have a question for you. And this is about, I think, you know, talking about campaigns and getting creative with things and the conversation that's continuing to happen. So coming from an event that is not yet canceled, it's scheduled for the fall. And every time we post, we get questions on if we are continuing to host the events. Do we respond or wait until we have more of an update? And I think that could go for events, but also just questions about the future that, you know, we all don't even know what the future is, but people want information, right?
People do want information. I would say that the way we look at it is if you have decent information to share, share it about whether or not the event's going to take place. The more proactive you are, the more the folks who would be exhibiting at the event are more prepared for what's coming. That's incredibly important. I also think that the more communication that you do, even if you don't have an answer right away, at least you're in touch with the people you're talking to folks and letting them know. I think that really relieves a lot of fear of the unknown issues. I like to correlate this, of course, to improvisation, right? And there are certain basic tenets of improvisation that we are living now more and more every day. We're being asked to change on a dime, to pivot, to be a lot more agile, to, you know, rediscover the new normal of our work lives. And as we're looking at upcoming events, if you take the approach of yes and, right, towards what might be happening, and you were mentioning that earlier, D. Fish, about being, instead of saying the but, saying the and. If people are coming to you and asking you, well, what about the event? Is it going to happen? The opportunity to say yes, but, you know, yes, and in this capacity, possibly, versus the other capacity. We know that things like even this week, we thought, oh, we'll be back to work in May. And then we get the announcement, we're not going to be back at work in May. To stay present in the moment, to be authentic and real in your responses to the people who are asking about these questions is incredibly important right now.
No, I love that. I think one thing too is you talk about the conversation, making sure that conversation is happening.
Yes.
But also not giving information that's inaccurate. You know, I think like the worst thing you could do is say, yes, for sure, it's going to be happening, and we'll all be happy and healthy and vaccinated come May 15th. And
yeah, I think that what you do is you give people peace of mind. You tell them exactly where you know where you are right now. If your intent is to migrate from an in-person event to a virtual event, have your ducks in a row in terms of how you would like that event to play out. I know some of our clients are faced with event managers who are saying, hey, we're going to do it virtually. Oh, that sounds great. Well, what would you like from us in order to be able to be presenting virtually in this event? And then they don't have anything lined up yet. So honestly, if you have a solution, if you think you're going to go virtual, make sure you get your ducks in a row in terms of how your exhibitors are going to be able to provide the content and valuable information that the attendees are going to want.
Right, perfect. Thank you for that. So, Megan, I wanted to ask this question to you because I think that in your work, you're definitely focused on a lot of this already. And so the question is pretty simple. My company has a Facebook community of 350 individuals. These are nonprofit, in the nonprofit space. Any advice on how to grow this community and be helpful to existing members besides sharing educational materials? So what else can you do besides just posting that educational article? I mean, that stuff's good. I hope everybody's doing that, but what else can you do to engage, build, and grow that community now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can cultivate that community. Definitely posting helpful information is a good first step. But what you really want to be thinking about is how to create engagement, right? How to move it beyond a one direction exchange of information into a two-way conversation. So I would be looking at things like we were talking about influencers a little bit before. Is there anyone in your Facebook community that is highly influential or really active that you could collaborate and bring into a spotlight and see who else within, you know, their extended network you can kind of ripple out to through those kinds of activations. You can look at, you know, engaging your employees as community ambassadors and amplifiers of your message, as well as engagers in conversations. You can, you know, of course, there's always some, you know, opportunities to use things like paid tools to get more of an extended reach and to find those new community members to bring them in. But I think a really big piece about this is looking for ways and the right ways to drive engagement, whether that's, you know, using live video so that you are creating kind of real world experiences that your community can tune into and participate and engage in. Look for ways that those social platforms and technologies can enable you to be more in touch and in communication with your community and grow it that way.
Oh, I love that. Mary, Caleb, either of you have any ideas on how to, you know, provide for communities besides just the educational piece? Totally putting you on the spot there. So I'll let you think about it. I've got one idea, and I'm going to actually give credit where credit is due. A friend of mine, Andy Crestadina, who runs an agency here in Chicago, and actually worked with SMS before. We were talking about how to market, how to provide content right now. And one of the things that he said, I thought was really smart and really accurate, is not only can we provide information for people, but also space, right? In fact, I mean, one of the things I even love about what we're doing today is obviously everybody's got a chance to get information, get some good ideas. But also just there's the idea of community itself is often just, hey, we're in this shared space together, right? If you think about what engagement is, it's conversation. It's not necessarily, here's the 5 things you need to do. Sometimes it is the, whew, this is tough. And, you know, and the other person go, yeah, it really is. And having, you know, that human to human engagement. So I think even just doing, you know, kind of like the videos that Megan was talking about, just saying, hey, we're going to have, you know, a video webinar with 10 people if you want to be on it. You know, one of the things I've done lately is video happy hours with people in my network, and you get 10 people having a beer. Usually there's, to Megan's point, there's like 7 kids in various frames jumping in and out. But I think that's something you can provide for people. And if you do that, they're going to want to bring their friends in. Hey, you should check out this group. Hey, I got a lot from it. You know, there's a lot of value there. So that's one thing I would add.
I would agree. Giving anybody a platform to talk about how they're dealing with things right now is incredibly important. So I'm familiar with Andy. I know him not personally, but I really dig the guy. He's absolutely right in giving people a space or a forum to be talking about what's going on right now, how it's affecting you. If you are a brand that can create that kind of conversation through your platforms, you can ask questions and say, you know, feel free to weigh in here. You know, what's your biggest concern right now? Let's talk about that. I think that's going to take you a lot further than any other type of conversation right now. You've got to be incredibly important about the topics, but giving a forum for people to express how they're feeling and being authentic and providing that forum will be incredibly helpful to folks right now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, I'd be interested to hear what you both think about this, but I feel like in my circles, at least, a lot of those spaces are popping up, almost too many, you know, like, whereas I feel like the people I've been talking to in the last few weeks, this was not true the first few weeks of this crisis, where I think people were desperate to take off some of the emotional weight. But I feel like the longer this goes on, the more people are going to want to return to some sense of normalcy. So I wonder, this is a question for you both, like at what point do those forms become like counterintuitively not helpful because we just want to move on? I don't think we're there yet, but I feel like we're going to get there soon. The other thing I was going to say is I would never underestimate the power of like one-on-one outreach, like just to support a community, like just reaching out and saying, hey, how are you doing? Like not assuming it's bad, not assuming it's good, just saying, hey, I wanted to check in on you. What's going on? Like, and it's pretty easy, depending on the scale of a community, you know, it's pretty easy to do that one-on-one, you know, pick a couple people and just reach out to them or create forms for people to check in on each other. I found that to be pretty powerful when people just want feeling seen, you know.
Well, in terms of your question, Caleb, about when enough is enough, I think you have to look at the data, look at the engagement, see if the engagement's dropping off, and then you can take a good cue from that. I think that's really important. Another thing,
that's smart.
And then another thing that I'm reading a lot about right now, or if people can afford to get a chat bot going and having like even if it's one-on-one, yes, absolutely one-on-one communication, but even if you are in the market to be able to put a chat bot up there and provide even more conversation with customers as they're visiting, not necessarily your social media platforms, but as they're visiting your site, that's going to be really helpful right now too.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I wanted to tag in because this touches on a couple of things that I've also been thinking about, which is, you know, first and foremost, I think as marketers, our immediate kind of go-to mindset is to start pumping out messages, right? Like, you know, join the conversation, lead the conversation. And what we've been talking a lot more about internally is how can we be better listeners? How can we use the technology that we have to really be able to hone in on what is important to people? What are the right conversations or the meaningful conversations, trends that we need to understand? Because one of the things that I think is easy to fall into, and it's an understandable response, is to suddenly feel like, well, we've got to be everywhere. We've got to be on all of these different channels, and we've got to be pumping out these messages and making sure that we are top of mind or at the forefront of that conversation. When I think, you know, kind of going back to that relationship-based everything model, it's really how can we kind of tune our dials? How can we really hone in on what the important topics or the important conversation is and find a meaningful way to connect with people on those discussion topics and in those right channels?
No, I love that. More listening is good. And I would even, you know, throw out what we're doing right now is kind of in that vein, right? We didn't, you know, this isn't about, hey, here's the 3 things we want to talk about. It's you tell us what you need. You tell us what's on your mind, and we'll, you know, hopefully be able to give you some insights that will help. So I think you're exactly right. And you're right, Caleb. I think eventually this is going to get to the point of webinar fatigue where, you know, we're going to be like, wait, more. But I think Mary said, right, when people stop showing up, that's when it's a good time to be done with it. But I think we've got a little bit more time until it happens. One thing I found too is that sometimes because there is so much virtual opportunity available, some of the attendance, you know, some things that I've been working with is a little lower than it would normally be, but it's more engaged, right? Because people have more opportunity. So I would say when you're looking at, you know, your analytics, when you're looking at the numbers, don't just go, oh, something's a little lower than it usually is. That means it didn't work. The people that are showing up are really showing up, is what I've been telling people. So take care of them. So here's, you know, kind of switch gears a little bit into, you know, how to build relationships with not necessarily clients, but, you know, potential clients or people that you want to bring into your business. Before this current situation occurred, I started in an agency, visiting clients, getting them excited about influence marketing in Latin America, right? So you can't just go down the street anymore. What would you advise? What would your advice be in this moment in time when we're unable to visit or talk to prospects and sell them on kind of a full service influence relationship agency scenario? So what happens when we can't start relationships by actually being present. Existing clients, that's great. We have a little latitude, but what if we don't know somebody that well? Are there any things we can do to help move that relationship forward? Any thoughts? I'm going to throw that out to everybody. I'm getting smiles and nods, but who's going to jump in first?
I can
Caleb?
take it first.
Oh.
Oh no, Caleb, you go ahead.
Sure, I can start. I mean, this is exactly related to what I was saying earlier. We're thinking about at 18 Coffees in the next few months. And I think it's really important to, be flexible in terms of your definition of your business model and your revenue streams right now, as much as you can be. I think that we always look at relationship building, not just from a normal sales funnel perspective, but from a how we are adding distinct value perspective. So obviously we have our kind of fully funded longer term consulting projects that we do with people, or if you're an agency, like your retainer based relationship, your AOR kinds of relationships, which are the most valuable thing, kind of the white whale of sales prospects, right? But if you think of how do we provide value from a webinar perspective or a white paper, or how do we do 1 or 2 day trainings, or how do we, there's lots of versions of your expertise, not just the, retainer-based relationships. So that's one thing I would say is, what are ways you can start building distinct value that you're not doing right now, and ways that especially are very accessible in the kind of digital virtual moment we're at. Is one thing that I would say. And then the other is just, again, I would think creative about how do we think about our revenue streams from a business in the next few years that may not have been something we would have even considered 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Megan, what were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I can add to that because quite honestly, that's actually been our circumstance long before this. Most of the time our clients they're distributed all over the country, if not all over the world. So I would say 90% of our clients, we actually almost never get to see in person. We've, from the beginning to the end, our relationship with them has always been virtual. And I agree with Caleb. I think that, now is the time where everyone kind of needs to rethink or reimagine how you're offering services, what the needs are. It's really time to kind of put everything back on the table and do a little bit of spring cleaning, reorganizing. But I would also say that, the way that there's one thing that doesn't change, which is that people still need help solving their problems. And so when you don't have the benefit of being able to walk into a room and pitch people in person and focus on kind of that relationship first touch point, then I think what you need to do is really, really understand their business. You need to really understand what it is that they are trying to solve, what it is that they need to accomplish, and then you need to architect your entire approach to coming into that organization or that business from that standpoint, because that's really going to be the leg that you have to stand on in order to create an opportunity there and help them understand what that potential is.
I love that.
If I may, Dee.
No, you may not.
Oh, damn it. Mute. I'm going to yes and what Megan and Caleb said. Absolutely to all those things, but I am going to take it in a weirder direction. I believe the person who asked the question owns an agency, and I work for an agency. As an agency, you have a little bit more lateral movement in terms of what you put out there, because creativity is the coin of the realm for our agencies. One of the things we're currently doing with our new business development team is, on top of sending out really helpful educational information, allowing them access to free training content on marketing, etc., we're also taking a more human approach in terms of, yes, of course, laughter and comedy. Right now, things aren't that funny. So what we're trying to do is kind of alleviate the load with our prospects by sharing anecdotal humor, emails from the new business folks. They don't know us, but the one thing they will remember is an email where we admitted all of our faux pas with technology, right? So currently we have stories going on about the worst thing you ever did in an email. and we're sharing these stories out to our prospects and saying, oh gosh, and where everything is technical, everything is virtual right now, don't make the mistakes we did, right? So we're giving advice, but we're doing it through a sense of humor, giving people a reason to smile, doing additionally, like, you know, those successories posters where, you know, you can do it or hang in there, and there's a kitten on a little bar or something like that. We're kind of being sardonic about our you can do it, and giving people encouragement, but doing it with a sense of humor, because we're all in a landscape of uncertainty right now. So kind of grounding folks and letting them know we're a creative agency. We understand what they're faced with, and hey, we could all use to just feel our human side and find a little bit of joy right now.
No, I love that. Love that. Thank you for adding that in.
Great, Mary.
You know, one little tip that I would add as well for anybody who's doing some sort of new business development work, if you can't meet with somebody in person, obviously we've got virtual technology, Zoom calls and stuff. I still think it's valuable to send something physical to people, because then you're a real person. Even if it's just mailing them a note, you know, sending them a book, sending them something from your agency, just they get something physical, and all of a sudden, oh, Mary's a person, right? Not just a 2D face. You know, Caleb is an actual individual. Oh, Megan just sent me that book that she referenced in our conversation and why we should work together. Okay, that again, it just makes you real, which can be really valuable. So you
can add a little bit more to that by like putting it in a Ziploc bag and writing a note like, this has been hermetically sealed and you'll be fine if you touch it. You know, that kind of thing, like guaranteeing that people are going to be okay by receiving something physical in the mail.
Throw in a Clorox wipe.
You know, that kind of thing. Exactly. Be real.
For sure. So we got this question from Nate, and I'm going to kind of throw this to everybody because I think you'll have different approaches on it, but I think it's really valuable because it gets to something that Caleb said about kind of the three categories. And I think this is maybe a category where it's really a challenge. I work for a residential commercial roofing and siding company. Since we're in construction and infrastructure, we are labeled essential by the local government. So they're still in operation. What, if anything, is appropriate as far as approaches on social media in this time where people are not likely looking to spend on a new roof, right? So somebody who's in the middle, definitely valuable, but not healthcare, right? But also not Lamborghinis, right? What's a good way for you to approach social in that kind of setting?
Yeah, I can take a first stab at this. I think it's a really interesting use case. So I'll start from a business strategy standpoint first, and that is that I actually think it could be a really interesting time to be in this business, given how much time people are spending in their homes. Like, people actually might reprioritize spending money on making their home beautiful, right? And so I think from a business strategy standpoint, you could have a case to be aggressive here, which is an interesting kind of senior leadership decision. But social is an interesting niche of that because our social media milieus tend to be a reflection of our collective id and like be, you know, alarmist and garbage fire on any given day about what's happening in the news cycle. First thing I thought when you were saying we should mail things, David, was, yeah, if the post office still exists in a few weeks, we'll see. You know, it's like, those are the kind of conversations we're having publicly on social on any given day. So I think it's a tougher needle to thread to be a brand that is in this category on social specifically right now, because I think you have to be really careful to be both kind of, you know, saying we still exist, we are still an option for you, but necessarily not doing any kind of hard selling. I mean, hard selling in any category is tough on social to begin with. So automatically, you know, what we would recommend is, how are you adding value to, you know, a conversation you want to be a part of? I think that's especially true right now. And I think there are ways to do it right now that are actually pretty interesting and creative. I'm thinking about the brand Steakums. You guys seen Steakums in the last few? Oh, you have to go look at what Steakums has been doing on Twitter specifically. It's fascinating. They're basically just like talking about what good data looks like in a pandemic. And you were like, why is your brand talking about this? I think that's like super out there, but they're getting a lot of positive praise about their approach to it on social right now, which is fascinating to me. So there's ways to get creative, to Mary's point, but I think you have to really, again, just be mindful of your tone. I think that like you can be lighthearted, you can be fun, you can be self-mocking in this moment, as long as you are mindful of your tone and it doesn't feel like you are, mocking others. It doesn't feel like you're making light of the situation by any means. I think those are editorial decisions that are really hard right now, but not impossible. And now I want to hear what everyone else thinks, because I think this is a really interesting question.
Well, building products is one of the verticals that CBD marketing we're experts in. And so we really understand the landscape that you're faced with right now. Yeah, to Caleb's point, social's interesting way to go. But the truth is this, right? Everybody is stuck at home. For the people who have the means to make some changes to their home, I'm seeing that happen. I would look at the data first, but even in my own neighborhood, I'm seeing more and more people installing decks and patios, et cetera, because they still have their jobs, right? So that's something you want to be careful about. But from a roofing contractor perspective, people are going to need those regardless. To Caleb's point about being smart about your tone, I think that's incredibly important, but it's also knowing which social media platforms are most appropriate for this kind of conversation, right? So people often look at, say you have an Instagram account, that's more about culture of your company. So doing any strong selling on Instagram might not be, and I'll let Megan add to this for sure, might not be the best place, but share more information on LinkedIn about your company, make it more educational. With Facebook, you can have more conversations with your residential target audiences about it. And I don't think it's in any way wrong for you guys to sell that as a service, because that's where people's heads are at right now. And a way to do that is to talk about, hey, we know you're stuck inside. And a lot of people are also talking about, hey, the one thing I have is a roof over my head. Well, there is a campaignable opportunity right there, and it's not going to make you seem tone deaf.
No, thanks, Mary. Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mary and Caleb said. I think it's really figuring out what the right position is. So yes, you don't want, you probably shouldn't continue marketing as usual, pumping out the same messages. But I think kind of the roof over your head campaign idea, talking about how people's homes and and the time that they spend in them and the memories that they create together are more important than ever before. And there's opportunities, there's value in investing in your home. And I think there's also two ways that you can approach this. I think you can be the very helpful, resource, all the ways to keep your roof healthy, all the ways to kind of maintain your gutters while you're home. You can do it in a way that's not salesy, but is helpful and educational. Or I was thinking about Drano. Drano did some really awesome social media campaigns. They created a whole Drano challenge. What can you get? What is it? What can you use Drano for, or what can you not use Drano for? So you could do it. You could do a funny campaign. Like you could figure out some way to bring an entertainment value to it. Again, I think it's really just about doing the work of trying to understand what's going on with your audience, like with your potential customers, and really making sure that everything that you put out there, it maps back to that.
No, I think that's fantastic. I'm reminded, and I forget what museum it was, but it was somewhere, I think out west, where they gave their social media account management to, like, I think the assistant building engineer, or it's just it was a very small museum, but he just started posting stuff about the museum, like exhibits, and kind of it was his own very unique perspective and quirky humor, and it blew up. If it was really good, then I would have remembered the museum. But the point being, it was an empty museum. Nobody could be there, and yet they were still able to get something from a very human perspective. And one thing I would probably follow up with what Caleb said is just being realistic with, yes, there's a lot of stuff going on, but if I just pay too much attention to social media, I'm going to have a skewed perspective of what is, the horrors that are out there. you know, for example, I live in a condominium and we are redoing our foundation right now. So I know that, you know, it had to be done. So we were in the market for that. And so yes, there you go. Thanks, Brianna. The National Cowboy Museum. That was it. Very humorous, worth checking into. And so again, going from not only that helpful perspective, but a human perspective. By the way, a lot of this stuff I think was important before all of this, but now it's really highlighting maybe some gaps in how we were approaching it. I think there's a lot of lip service paid to these things, and now we're being called to task to actually be human, to actually engage, to be authentic, all that kind of good stuff. Well, I think we got to all the questions, which is always awesome. Brianna, did I miss any of the questions that came in, or was there anything else? I also see that we're right at 12:56. So I might have done my job as a moderator and kept us on time. Excuse me as I break my arm, pat myself on the back.
Yeah, I think, yeah, to all of them. I just want to encourage, you know, everyone too, if there's anything that we didn't get to, you can reach out with #SMSsummit, and I'll make sure to tag the speakers, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to answer or provide any other assistance or just feedback that they can. But yeah, thank you to all the panelists just for, you know, sharing. And it's always great when everyone can come together and just have a candid conversation, just be real about what we're going through, and everyone's kind of, you know, in the ways to make, you know, connect with their audiences and make sure they're being of service and value to their users. So yeah, so we'll see you at the next Ask Us Anything, and thanks to everyone that joined us. We'll be emailing you a copy of the recording. So oh, good, getting some good feedback in the chat here. I appreciate it. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.